That is the ultimate. That's what we need. We need somebody like a third party involved, overseeing their operations. I think that's a big, part of the equation that's missing. Because yes, they know the rules. Yes, they are certified, licensed state applicators. They know what to spray. They know, not to spray in windy conditions. Does that mean they are? That's the million-dollar question. We have a lot of townspeople, abutters, people coming out saying, no, it was 15-mile-an-hour winds. It was gusting way more than that. My body is affected. I can't eat my food, because I have a garden right next to it. There's so much of this coming out.
So the Harwich story was not the first account you've heard of?
Absolutely not. No. It was the first where somebody said, yes, I will go forward, I will speak on TV, I will get in front of the selectmen. Like I, talked to Claire ahead of time and said, this is going to be a little work, it's going to take a little time, a little patience. Are you willing? And she said, absolutely. So she's been great to take her health and her personal body and put it on TV. I mean, that takes guts, and it will really help the community do the right thing with that.
Can you talk a little bit about what right-of-way means and what authority, if you would, for lack of a better word, NSTAR has? And because even in Brewster, when they put up gates and everything, and people...
Nobody knew that was happening.
Nobody, right.
That was a situation where it seemed like it happened overnight. It kind of was like... unfortunate because nobody discussed it with any sort of board. So there's historical societies, and NSTAR is mandated by the state to maintain vegetation along power lines, rights of ways. But you would think, especially when it comes to hardware, that they would reach out to the selectmen, to the townspeople, to the boards, and let them know what's going on. And they didn't. And literally these metal fences with padlocks came up over all 15 towns, I think 14 towns on Cape Cod, excluding Provincetown, within a few months. They say that was to keep, motor vehicles off and, protect what they're doing and this and that. And it was just an unfortunate situation because we weren't told, we weren't explained what was going to happen. So it was a shock for everybody, boards were contacting the state and the governor about what's happening. And so that went really quick. And another thing about rights of ways is the selectmen are, in a position where they can't really do too much because NSTAR is allowed to maintain vegetation along power lines, rights of ways on Cape Cod. It's over 150 miles times 200 square feet on average. And because it's a state, regulation, MDAR, okays the YOP, selectmen really don't have a lot of say in this situation. So granted, they've gone ahead and written resolutions that they don't want this going on in their town. NSTAR has still gone forward saying, but the state allows us to do it. So this is the whole issue that's going on and continues to be, topic of discussions. After seeing this video, we hear that MDAR says we will take certain things in consideration after discussions for that day, and hopefully that means we'll actually start changing some regulations. So we'll see where that leads. So when it comes to notifications, there's a couple of rules and regulations that are, I'm going to say this lightly, I think being overlooked. So there's a comment period, 45 days, where citizens are allowed to give a fact-based comments, and we always should take advantage of the situation, and it's a paragraph long, it counts. After that, there's 2 days, and then NSTAR makes a decision, and they've always said, carte blanche, NSTAR's YOP looks good, comments. There were more non-fact-based comments. NSTAR said in 2013 there were only 90 comments. I know firsthand, my circle is at 158 or 9 or something. So POCCA has gone forward asking through the governor's office for those comments from NSTAR to see if they were lost in the mail or what the situation was. Has asked for NSTAR's actual written amounts of herbicides that NSTAR used in 2013 and 2014, the weather conditions of those days that they were applied, as well as the comments. So 3 things. We asked them the early October. The governor's office said that they would send the email to NSTAR, and they did. NSTAR actually called me personally and said, we will get you that information. And this is the end of December, and I still haven't seen this. I follow through pretty much bi-weekly on that. So that's kind of telling me something without saying a word. You know what I mean? We really want to see what those actual results are to be able to, put things together and make an equation. We're believing, because they're not willing to give us this information, that perhaps there were windy conditions, or they did apply more than they were supposed to, or something, and so they're concerned that they're overstepping and not living up to their own regulations. So that's a huge concern for us right now, and we're just waiting for their written words on that in order to make, any sort of correct conclusions.
Someone that watched this said, if it was an ideal weather conditions, everything was ideal for application.
Yeah.
Can you test the soil for the effective, other than seeing things are brown and dead?
You won't see anything brown and dead for 6 months. What they've applied is Mazepar and Kyanite, and it is a slow chelator, so it gets into the plant's pores, and it takes time to actually then kill the plant. It is something that gets applied in the fall to woody plants, to the oaks and the pines, and so of course they're entering hibernation, so you can't really tell immediately anyway if it's the effects of the herbicides. But come in the spring, by June, what is supposed to be green is not going to be green. So that's the timing of the effectiveness. So it does take time to actually visually see what's going on. Testing, you can test. I'm not a scientist, but what I've heard is it's very expensive and it's very limiting. So as soon as it rains, where is it gone? It moves. They use a petroleum-based surfactant to have the actual application spray stick, but after that, where does it go? If the plant doesn't absorb it, and plants aren't absorbing when it's cold. So, there's this, kind of catch-22 situation going on where they try to do it, when it's not freezing weather. They applied to 9 towns in less than a month, the month of October. They started October 1st and they were done before November 1st because the weather was so good. This is 2014. But there were lots of other weather conditions that were concerned about. It was a lot of wind, and what is written in the regulations is from 3 miles an hour to 10 miles an hour, no gusts. Well, it's really, we live on Cape Cod, and there are, top of a hill, a sand dune, as I call it, to a bottom is different weather conditions. So they do say they have somebody that is monitoring the weather. On the day that Claire was, her farm was potentially harmed, they took weather stats at 9 in the morning, at 12, and then at 4. And so I guess it's not like there's somebody actually there all the time. So when they're on top of the hill and bottom of the hill, it's going to be different. That was a piece of a puzzle I kind of put together listening to these selectmen's meetings. Is that's vague too. That doesn't make me feel comfortable either. So even though there's somebody might be out there with a little something going on at 9 in the morning, 2 o'clock is, might be a total different weather condition.
Right.
So 4 o'clock, a day is done, it doesn't matter. So another vague thing that we're, taking in consideration at this point and learning that we need to tighten regulations, and we're really hoping that MDAR will listen and work with us, because this is our land and this is what we're asking for. So we'll see.
Just one other question. Do you have any idea what it costs for a company like NSTAR, what it costs to administer a program like this? Is it
So we have
hundreds of
asked,
thousands of dollars, or?
we have asked for that as well. We've asked for the amount that it actually costs NSTAR for their materials, which would be the herbicides, the petroleum-based surfactant, the gasoline, the blowers, materials, as well as the labor. What are they paying another company? And again, they have not come forth with any sort of information on that topic. We're asking and have asked our Senator Dan Wolf to continue to kind of pressure them to receive that information, and we're really hoping that a number will be given for 2013 so we can compare it to 2014. They sprayed 8 towns in 2013. They sprayed 9 towns in 2014. There's got to be numbers somewhere, and we're really hoping to be able to, see the patterns, if there's a pattern. And ultimately, Dan Wolf's ask is for the towns to be in charge of their actual power lines. Whatever means that is at this point, discussions has not, gone forward, but it'll be means without herbicidal applications. And his desire is to, whatever that number is, shift it to the towns. So that's kind of where we're at. That's the ultimate outcome. And we will continue to ask for that in hopes that that's going to be the conclusion that will make the community work with the utility and have a happy ending.
Why does NSTAR think it necessary to have the land underneath their power lines, in my terminology, stripped of vegetation?
Well, that they have to actually do. That is part of the protocol for vegetation, for herbicidal applications. So this is vegetation management, and in order to apply herbicides, they are not, it's against the law, another regulation. They're not allowed to spray any vegetation that's over 12 feet. So what they do is what we call clear cutting. They state it's not a clear cutting, but you look at it and it looks pretty down to nothing. Although they do leave certain oaks that are just grow up in the bushy form. not the straight tall trees. So the scrub oaks they leave because they supposedly top out at 12 feet in many years. So they've left the scrub oaks. So in leaving the scrub oaks, technically they say it's not a clear cutting. So they, cut down to just a couple inches off of, the flora, and vegetation does grow back. Because when you cut it, you stimulate growth. You've still left the root systems. You've lightened the load. The roots are going to double. The suckers are going to come out on certain vegetation, and it just becomes this cycle of getting bigger, getting faster, getting taller, getting more. And so they cut down, and then within a year, they apply herbicides to the intended targeted vegetation, in hopes to kill it. Now, I'll tell you, in Harwich, it didn't get, die back the first time they applied, so they needed to reapply a year later, and this is the pattern that concerns me. How many times do you need to reapply? And, again, the intended vegetation is not the only thing getting targeted out there. A lot of the undergrowth is as well, and it's unfortunate to see. I looked at Harwich because I sprayed Harwich in 2013, and then we went out to Harwich along the power lines last June, and it was obvious that the low bush cranberries, barberries, they were absolutely harmed as well. Now, not all of them were, so they did grow back into what I called the dead zone. You could see where somebody was walking because it was just a line. It was dead. And NSTAR says, well, it's gonna come back. And I think, well, isn't this defeating the purpose of the YOP? You wish to only target the intended vegetation, and so you're hindering the growth of what we want to keep a ground cover of. And that's just a continual back and forth, discussion about that. Oh, but don't worry, in the end, and I'm like, it doesn't need to be this way along the way. So we'll just have to see, through time, how many times they apply in order to actually kill the intended vegetation, because the pines were looking green in August when we were out there hand pruning. Harwich Conservation Trust, thank you very much, went out with locals and did a pruning. I think it was every Tuesday morning for 6 mornings, 6 Tuesdays for 2 hours, to prove how many people it takes, how long, how far. And it was just a couple of young people, a couple of old people, and it didn't take very much, and we got really far. And NSTAR came out and looked and said that they would not actually spray what we hand pruned. So for an answer for all butters, if you get out and hand prune your own little section, it will make a difference. It will lessen the amount of herbicides above our aquifer. And we all can do this. We can even hire local landscapers if you physically can't go out or don't wish to go out to do it. But it will be very helpful. So that's something else that we can be doing in the meantime. So we'll see.
Animal life, insect life.
Yeah, so, I'm a landscape architect, so I really take in consideration what goes on with the living on our land here. And it just fascinates me. I call it the pathway of life. What does a plant go through in a year? It dies back in the winter, and then it comes up, and then its neighbor comes up, and I think they say hello to each other, and how was your winter? And what about, the turtles? They do too. They rely on the plants that come up to give them shelter and food. And the fox that run the same route day after day, and the coyotes, and what we can't see, the worms, the microorganisms. I mean, there's so many circles of life going on. To hinder that, it's just wrong. It's unnecessary in a situation where there are other successful means That's what we need to focus on, because we're doing a lot more harm than just killing back an oak and a pine along the way. And my belief is that there's a real simple answer. Granted, we've always, NSTAR used to mow once every 7 years in the past. So the vegetation, we got, decent height, not anywhere to harm our electric sources. I've never heard of it on Cape Cod. There was somewhere off Cape once upon a time, and thus, they said, okay, everywhere has got to be cut down, nothing and sprayed because of one incident. I've heard more incidences of, along streets, there's trees. They can't spray there, but the tree could, hit some sort of wire. Power lines, zero. So this is complete overkill. I see it as, you've got a mosquito and they're taking a bomb to kill the mosquito. It's just unnecessary. And for, the amount of herbicides and the types of herbicides, the types really freaks me out. We have, Garland 4, which you can't even get locally on Cape Cod. Like homeowners can't go to a garden center, get Garland 4, and put it on their land. One of the things NSTAR says is homeowners are using a lot of, chemicals on their property too. That is absolutely true, and on a whole, homeowners are using more. I agree with that. But yet NSTAR is the one company that is using the most. So that's why we're really asking them, in a situation where they can use other things, to use other means. Mowing will harm turtles, absolutely, as well. But we've got to see the pros and the cons of both and take the one with the less harm. My vote is for mowing. Simple, it's easy. You don't have to do it every year. And we can do it in times of the year where there aren't, walks of life as often as much. And there is not a perfect answer in this situation. We've just got to reach for something that works, where the townspeople are happy with this, where the selectmen are happy with this. It is our land, and we need to think about the next generations. If this affects our drinking water, because we don't know, there's never been any tests on sandy soil, there's never been tests with these products mixed together. We've got to be careful.
Because you mentioned the cost of testing it out, how prohibitive it is.
It's expensive.
Would you need some sort of private, a university or something like that to fund?
It's about, of course, funding, right? It's about a laboratory. Who has a laboratory set up that can test for Garland 4, Amazepar? I mean, even Roundup is it's the most widely used herbicide worldwide. Okay? Roundup it's an endocrine disruptor. It is so harmful to more than just the plants. It is made to kill plant cells. And does not discriminate. It also kills human cells. And it is, they're taking so much time to say we're testing, we're still testing, we're still testing. There's one lab in Chicago that will test for Roundup. It's thousands of dollars. So yeah, if somebody has, wants to stand up and put forth some financial efforts, this is wonderful. We would love the help. Anything's possible with money, right? That's where we're at here today. But Garland 4 kills oysters on contact. It's another issue I have with the problem with these particular herbicides. In an area where we're really reliant on oysters as our means of our livelihoods for many locals here. Why are we playing? Why are we even allowing and considering this as a solution? It's just, we're not connecting the dots. The dots are not being connected. And this is what we're really hoping to do, is to bring this to light, to share what's really going on in hopes that conclusions can be met and that are much safer solutions.
For the curious, do you know how many miles long the transmission lines are on Cape Cod?
Yeah, that's a guesstimate too. You know, you can sit and read maps, and what I come close to is 150 miles times 200 square feet. That's my little chime. But, you know, topography of land is this and this, and their power lines, there is one that's down the backbone of Cape Cod. That's kind of the one I took in consideration. But there's, you know, a couple others too along the way. You know, and talking to them in discussion, there's more than that. So it's an average to create a formula, and it's 200 feet wide at this point. It wasn't years ago, but they have widened their clear cutting and taken down a lot of trees that are now opening up views for neighbors, and there was a big uproar about that because people can actually see that. People can see the trees and now they're neighbors, and that was just devastating. I mean, these trees, it was unnecessary. These trees are old. I mean, it'll take 50 years to get them back, you know, and it's just completely unnecessary. And so it's unnecessary to have the fences, it's unnecessary to use herbicides, it's unnecessary to take down these trees. There's so much going on where there isn't communication with these, you know, the utility company and the selectmen and the townspeople. They're just coming and doing this, and that, you know, lack of, you know, oversight of what's happening is it's just a shame. It's just a shame. It's too bad. It doesn't need to be like this, you know. We can still have certain trees in certain areas, certain ages, certain heights. I mean, trees give us oxygen. If it's unnecessary to take them down, why are we, you know? I just don't see the need for all of this. It's like I say, it's overkill. What NSTAR and MDAR have going on for us on Cape Cod is unnecessary. What's coming up on 2015 is continuation of discussions on the topic with the EEA. POCCA has been invited by Senator Dan Wolf's office to help hopefully rewrite regulations. We're hoping to really fine-tune what has been written. There's 13 regulations that POCCA believes MDAR is not abiding by. I want to discuss each and every one in finite detail and explain, you know, what isn't working and why, in hopes to tighten them. And ultimately, the ask is to not use herbicides for vegetation management along power lines. If they are to be used, if we can't, you know, get that to happen, my ask will be to have a third party monitor the situation and write violations. There have been so many violations the past 2 years, last fall and this fall. Writing violations get sent to MDAR, and MDAR does nothing about it. So at this point, NSTAR and their certified state applicators have been able to do what they want. And you know, even when weather conditions aren't correct, they're out there, et cetera, et cetera. So there needs to be a system that is written that we can all live by, the state, the utility, and the townspeople. That is what I'm striving for. And we really want to make this clear, simple, and something that we all can put in our daily lives, that this is the way it's going to be for the future. So next generations don't have to go through this. So next generations won't be harmed by maintaining vegetation along power lines. That's my personal goal, is to keep health be the number one factor And of course, when something is a regulation, it is in writing, we must live by that and have that be the standard. And if violations need to be written, they need to be written. At this point, it's $25,000 per violation per person per day, and there have been so many that are just not even, I call it, they just get put under the carpet. They're not even considered. So that is a broken system. My goal is to make this a situation that it isn't like this ever again. 2015, we want to have something that's clear, concise, and for all of us to understand. And it certainly won't be where we're all happy. I believe it's going to be really hard to make everybody happy as the outcome, but at least we all know that we need to live by it. At this point, it's not working. People are getting harmed. Lots of uproar, lots of things not taken in consideration, and zero sensitivity. And this is about people, and it needs to be about the people. So this is what we'll see in the near future, what POCCA's striving for, and so stay tuned. So I hope that it makes a difference in the end. That's all we can do. Geez, it's been 5 years. I think about that, or more. It's since the summer, so 5.5 years. And I've been working to educate the governor since August, and working in meetings with the EEA, writing back and forth a lot of, all the 13, things that we really believe they're not living by, and to see that we actually penetrated the system is what I call it, got to a point where they're writing back, they're saying, please give us more information. Now we put it in doc form, and can you highlight, and because they're not little, it's pages long of information, and to see that they really, really wanted to learn more and had us go up to the State House and speak with them and go from one meeting to the next meeting to the next, to work with the NSTAR and ask for their input on the situation. So myself and Jim McCulley, who is an advisor on the advisory board for POCCA, we went to NSTAR about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and our ask in that meeting was, one last time, will you shift off of herbicides onto any other form that's non-toxic, and then you perhaps will become the heroes. You would get, the townspeople back on your side again and have good, relations, et cetera, et cetera. And they said, no, we'd rather wait for the state to change the regulations, and then we'll live by those. So we went one more time to ask them, face to face, and tried. And so we are going to go work with the state regulations through the Energy and Environmental Agency, the EEA, who is above NSTAR and regulates NSTAR, to change NSTAR's regulations. So that's where we're going.
NSTAR is more than just a Massachusetts utility company. They're based in Texas. Are you aware of similar stories and similar situations, whether it's rights of way or pesticide use in other states?
Yeah, I know of Boulder, Colorado. Their townspeople, the way it was described is the townspeople fired the local utility from maintaining vegetation with herbicides along their power lines, and they took over the whole entire responsibility themselves. And it's been years, and it's been going well. So that's a positive outcome report. Other ones are, again, towns not wanting this to happen, and the utility still going forward and doing it regardless. So there was one, kind of hope. So we wish to do that as well, ultimately. But there's a financial part of the equation. that needs to be answered. I don't know how much it would cost to maintain vegetation along power lines on Cape Cod. I believe mowing would be the cheapest. I believe there will be a lot of volunteer people that are willing to actually go out and hand prune. But 150 miles times 200 square feet is a long distance, and because if an issue happens, like the electricity does get affected due to a tree falling along the power lines, and we townspeople were in charge of the area, but NSTAR's responsible for the area, that's kind of a problem, you know? So that's where we're at. That's why NSTAR is in charge of the area, needs to be shifted legally. And so we'll see what it entails in order for this to happen.
You mentioned you've been doing this for 5 years. Can you talk about how and when either POCCA was created, or if you could talk about the creation of it?
Sure. So, okay, POCCA was created in July of 2013 because a lot of concerned citizens stepped up to say, you know, we really want to protect our drinking water. And at that point, of course, it was mostly about NSTAR going forward with their YO-PRE to spray herbicides. But there's other things, too, to consider, like fertilizer use on Cape Cod, wastewater management systems. There's nitrogen and phosphorus that's, you know, just overabundant and unnecessary. So POCCA's on all sorts of boards, you know, every wastewater board possible. We've done a great initiative with the fertilizer. NSTAR has offered the towns, all 15 Cape Cod towns, to write either a regulation or a bylaw or an ordinance to lessen the amount of fertilizer in their town. Now, it kind of all goes together, because with the wastewater issue, we want to lessen the amount of nitrogen and phosphorus. By 25%, the towns will get credit when the wastewater plan goes forward by the Cape Cod Commission. It's called the 208 wastewater plan. And so we see that these pieces of the puzzle are all coming together, and it's all about protecting water. So we created POCCA, Protect Our Cape Cod Aquifer, in July of 2013, and people stepped up to become members, to be part of the advisory board, to have meetings, to think of initiatives about fertilizer, educating all the towns that this opportunity is happening, and it's time sensitive. And we got 8 towns involved. And actually this week we go to the hearing to see if it gets to go forward from the county level to the state level. We're also working very closely on stakeholders in 4 towns for the wastewater. The Cape Cod Commission is putting forth a plan, the 208, but we're going forward after that, now working closely with Orleans and East Hammer, Brewster, the Tri-Town, to really describe each cove and inlet and what it's going to entail, you know, to lessen those amounts. Another initiative that POCCA wants to do in 2015 is the yard signs. So for those people that don't use any form of man-made chemicals or fertilizers on their land, you're just going to be donated a little like sign for your yard that can just say that. So we're creating that at the moment, and that'll be a whole initiative about teaching homeowners how they can lessen their amounts of you know, impact above our aquifer. That's going to be a real big educational piece in this whole puzzle. There's a lot to do with that, from inside our homes, inside our bodies, outside on our land. It's going to be exciting to prove that we can. You know, I see it as we have a responsibility above an aquifer. We're so lucky to have our drinking water right below us. We really are. We're very fortunate. It's right here, and it's not traveling through 6 towns from a quarry somewhere like Boston. You know, it's fresh, it's below us. We can tap into it any time. But that also means responsibility, and we want to lessen the amount of impact. You know, more people come in the summer, the population of the human race gets bigger. We've got to think about, there might be a tipping point someday, and then what happens? Where do we go? How do we drink? How do we survive? You know, this is our greatest natural resource on Cape Cod, is our drinking water. And it's time that we actually think about, you know, every single day, the products that we purchase, that matters, you know, because it's going to go down our sinks or on our land one way, form, or another. There are not any sort of, you know, filtration systems that can, you know, take these heavy metals and these chemicals and shift them. You know, it's not about that. It's about just not even purchasing that. So education will be happening through POCCA to see if we can really make a difference in time. And you know, other things that we look forward to doing is educating about the wastewater. I say if we poop and drink water on Cape Cod now, we all have to get involved because we live here. This is our land. And it's not just for us, it's for our children and our children's children. So POCCA was created for, you know, and through a lot of love, thinking about future. And there's things that we can do today in order to actually help that. And we really wish to continue to move forward to, you know, education, I think, is the key to all success. So we need to educate ourselves on what to do with wastewater, but we need to educate others on how they too can, you know, just shift their lifestyle a little bit in a way that can even be cheaper, you know. So I'll bring in the cost factor of things. You know, there isn't a reason why instead of using Roundup, we can use vinegar. It's much cheaper too, you know. So we're really trying to make those equations, you know, obvious and simple and easy for the betterment of our future here on Cape Cod. You know, it's about a quality of life. We want to better our quality of life here. So hopefully everybody will wish to get involved. You know, I see it as habits. We have habits. Some are good, some aren't so good. Regardless, we all go to certain supermarkets or the same stores to, you know, purchase things. You know, so it's a matter of changing. It's like a new skill you're incorporating. And I think if it's, you know, for overall goodness, then we all should just learn to shift our habits. And I think it's that simple, really. This isn't complicated, but it is change. And I think we get stuck on that sometimes. Change doesn't have to be bad. Change is a good thing. One thing we know for sure is change happens. And it's always going to, you know. So POCCA's future is, you know, it's going forward, full force. I see more hope than I have ever with all these topics, you know, with NSTAR reaching out saying, yes, we will take things in consideration and start changing regulations. And to be able to be a part of the wording of those regulations is an honor. With fertilizer, educating, POCCA reached out to all 15 towns. We wrote a primer stating what the Cape Cod Commission offered, which really wasn't, I'm going to say, strong enough. You know, they had 10 foot, we want 100 feet. So we at POCCA actually wrote our own suggestion to the boards of health about the fertilizer opportunity going on right now. And we've got 8 towns involved all together, and that is just another little proud moment I have. And so I've asked for an extension for the fertilizer opportunity for 6 months in order to get next spring, 2015, the other towns involved at their town meetings. So on the warrant, they must be on in January in order for that to come through. So I'm continuing to reach out to the boards of health of the other towns. I've asked Senator Dan Wolf to also reach out to them, and he said he would. I asked him to do it in a letter form. He said he would actually call them. So that'll hopefully take care of some uneasiness that those other towns might be having. Like maybe how do you monitor fertilizer applications by homeowners and businesses? I mean, that's a good question. We don't know. But taking advantage of the fertilizer opportunity now while the state gives it to us is what we want to do, and we can fill in those blanks afterwards. You know, considering the 208 wastewater wants us to take nitrogen and phosphorus out of the equation, if the towns have the fertilizer bylaw or, you know, regulation or ordinance written, then this will be much easier for them to do. So we kind of see that this works hand in hand, and you know, in the future years, it really, really will come together nicely and be much easier than having to do this through the state. It gives the towns more control on these topics, and that's really a big deal. One other thing that POCCA took on as an initiative was in 2013 when NSTAR sent out their YOP, the yearly operational plan. It was late in the summer. I thought about bringing it up with the selectmen, so I went ahead and got on the agenda of all 15 Cape Cod towns, one at a time. And my ask of the selectmen at that time was, if they do not wish for herbicidal applications along power lines throughout Cape Cod, throughout their land, to write a resolution and sign it and send it to MDAR and NSTAR as well. And 14 out of 15 towns did just that. It took months of time to, you know, give a presentation in front of the selectmen and to receive their written letters. It's all on POCCACapeCod.org's website. They're all there. Each town, you know, did a great job. Dennis talked about, you know, the worms, the microorganisms. Yarmouth talked about the citizens and the townspeople, et cetera, et cetera. It was beautiful, the outcome of that initiative, proving that we don't want this here. And so, you know, having the local utility continue to go forth without, I see it, permission from the selectmen on their land it's just a shame. So this is completely a case of the utility against a community, and I was glad that POCCA had the opportunity to go forward and speak to each town and educate them more about the facts that there are other alternatives that are successful, and to see that the selectmen stood up about this really, really, I mean, it says a lot, and we should thank them all. I sure did. And we should continue to ask our selectmen to write to MDAR about this situation. It does continue to live on, unfortunately, and the more that we can do to keep it, you know, current, and then that would be the best that we can do. So I wanted to take the time to realize that this is the 15th POCCA Cape Cod TV show, and thanks to LCTV, I've been brought from studio audiences to, you know, out on power lines and libraries, as you can tell, here in Orleans today, and selectmen's meetings. I really want to thank LCTV for being there for me and for our community, to able to bring this into people's homes, to continue the outreach of current events, of what's really happening here. It's the truth of our time, and we've got to get involved because we live here. And I think the worst thing that we can do is to not get involved and expect change. And so I really wanted to take a time to say thank you, LCTV. I look forward to another successful year with you next year and beyond. And it's been a trip. What a trip it has been, right? So thanks to everybody that's helped out from behind the scenes to coming along with me, and I appreciate it all.